Hi and welcome back to this week's New Zealand Property Podcast and Video Series. And we've got another great guest next to me today, Artie Williams from Ardmore Group. Welcome along.
Mike, how are you, mate?
Very well,
Good,
very
good.
well. And we've got you along today because you're into commercial property and do a few bits and pieces. So before we really get going, just tell us a bit about what you do.
What we do?
Yeah, what you do and why you're here.
Yeah, look, I'm obviously a transition from my previous job and
Yep.
what people know me for, but along that way you find interests and you find where you're going to go for your next step in life, and for me property was the obvious one. I'm very much like seeing the involvement of property, like seeing the developments, and like seeing the values that can be added to property. And we all know sort of how safe they can be, but we also know the risks. And if you've been in the market for the last, whatever it is, 15, 20 years, I think you'll be doing all right. But like anything, it changes, and we don't know where the future is going. But you've just got to be positive. So, at Ardmore Group, what we do is they've been around. They're an established entity. They've been around since 1995.
Right.
So a long time in the industry. And look, add value investors is probably where we put ourselves in terms of what we do. Is we look to see what the property needs, whether it's development type of angle, or whether it's a tenant refurb, a fit out, a new tenant needs to be in it, it's a vacant building, just adding value to a building that sort of potentially is run down, or the owner's at a position where they need to move on. They either want to increase their exposure, or they want to decrease and get out of it. So for us, it's very much dealing sort of directly with the ex-owner, what value or what position they're in, and then for us to present it. And yes, we hold a fair few properties, and then we can also represent them to the market. But it's an interesting game.
Yeah, no, great stuff. And we concentrate a lot on residential, and this same deal. Keep some, sell some, whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
For yourself, I mean, we talk often on the show about there's so many ways to do properties. There's buy and holds, there's trading, there's developing, there's God knows what, commercial in this case here.
Yeah.
And I met a guy earlier today, in fact, that you sold a residential property through a few years ago, and
Yes.
It's going all good, so that's all good, mate.
That's good.
There's so many ways. So why, I guess the question I'm asking this is, why did you sort of choose commercial, and you had to go at residential first beforehand?
Yeah, I had to go at residential, and residential is a different type of market in that you've got to be hands-on, you've got to be connected with your tenant on a sort of, I wouldn't say daily basis, but on a very regular basis, because you want to see the quality, and the wear on the houses can be great at times. So you've got to be monitoring that, and then you've got the managers that can fit in. But I'm a bit more of a person that likes to deal direct with people to understand, what people need. So for me, moving to commercial seemed the logical move. One, yes, you're probably dealing with less buildings, but you're dealing with less people as well.
Yeah.
In terms of you've got one tenant or a number of tenants, but you've still got that one point of call. They very much are in the building and function on the building in a sort of as they need it. So they will look to invest in the building as a tenant, because it's their source of income rather than
That's
a home, right. and they feel the luxury should be provided to them. So for me, I think commercial's safer, but yet gives you more of a time management element as an investor. I also think there are other elements to commercial in terms of the risk quantums, but it's like anything. It's where does it fit with you? Do you know more about residential? Are you more comfortable with residential, or is commercial more your game? I would promote people to look into commercial if they've done residential and there's little elements that they don't like about it, to have a look at the other side. There's not just, as you said, there's not just that one way to make money from property, or not even make money, but in this current day and age and climate, to secure money.
That's right.
So I think that's an element you've really got to look at in commercial, with sort of 1 or 2% vacancy rates at the moment, which are very, very low. It's a great time to get into it.
Absolutely. And I guess the other thing with as you sort of identified too, I guess the government have changed so many rules with residential lately. It's just getting hard, and it's cost a lot of people listening to this or watching this right now a lot of money with installation and God knows what. And And it's changing all the time. It's revolving. It's evolving. I mean, all the time. I guess that's one big advantage right now with commercial. Yeah, and just sort of double-bulleted question there. I guess it depends on the property, but would you look at having a property manager looking at it, or looking after it, or you do yourself, or it depends? I guess is the answer.
It depends the nature of who you are.
Yeah.
Or if you're a group of investors, like there are different elements I'm involved in a group of us, or there's individual investments, and I think a property manager can give you good insight and good knowledge as to the property and the market, and also beyond the tenant, but it also potentially sometimes doesn't give you the security that you genuinely know what's happening. So I would encourage from past mistakes my own is that regardless if you do have a property manager, I would encourage you to regularly visit your investment, have a look at it, and get to know the tenant. Even if you do have a property manager, get to know the tenant. Personally, I prefer not having a property manager. I prefer doing it myself.
I guess with the group you're in, and there's a lot of people with commercial are in a group or a syndicate or whatever. One of those people will be the person that manages and looks after them anyway.
Correct.
And if they're right and they're doing a good job, and they've got a pretty invested interest, more than the property manager, I guess. So.
Correct. And when it comes to fixing things in a commercial, it's legitimately probably your roof, your four walls, and then the odd toilet here and there in terms of getting the infrastructure in place. But then the beauty of commercial, if the tenant has a breakage or something like that, then it's actually on their shoulders.
Yes.
So the responsibility lies with the tenant to make sure that it's running, and that is probably the key difference between residential, where the residential is you're walking in and you want it all working, where commercially they sign up for the land and the building, and then within that, e.g. a light goes out, or the tenant will fix the fixtures and things like that. So and then they invest, as I said, they invest into that property by the fit outs that they can do.
Yeah. Excuse me. We've already sort of started, but we'll go on to the reasons, I guess, the differences between the advantages of commercial over residential. We've sort of started off with some of them already with the tenants, and I know even as you said, the downstairs just recently got released, and a hearing professional company down there. Now, they spent 4 weeks and probably 100 grand of renovations to redo it how they wanted it down there, and they're in Ponsonby and they want to be the best thing sort of there. That's a bit of a different chain of thought when you're getting a tenant to come in my residential properties.
It is. You won't see a tenant come in and say, look, I really want to paint it and upgrade the bathroom and do that. So that is what they do. They're in it every day. It is their image, so they need a place that looks good. But I think, look, one of the other differences for me commercially versus residential is the reality that you look at a longer term game in commercial. E.g. you sign up a tenant for 3, 4, 5. The ultimate is 8 years plus, and therefore you've got a set structure. You've got a set forecast in terms of where you think things can go. Where residential, if I'm not mistaken, it's 30 days notice. Is that right, or 90 days notice?
That's 90 now. So.
For someone to leave.
Yes. Yeah.
That leaves you sitting there going, "Sheesh, how am I going to find it?" Yes, you may be able to find it better.
Yeah.
But that's always going to be on your mind. Where a commercial property, the tenant's not going to leave as such. If they do, they're going to give you a long lead time for you to then prepare to find someone else.
So you can plan. You
can fix things. You can really look at it as a long-term game, and that's really why I've gone commercial, and why I encourage a lot of other people.
How have things changed in the last couple of years with a few obviously bits and pieces and changes of people? What you've experienced yourself, commercial. People leasing, do they still happy with taking a long lease, or they take a bit short term because the economy is, or
it does depend on your tenant in terms of whether they're international or multinational or just a local operator. They generally have gone longer, the tenancy agreements, purely from the fact that the stock is actually depleted. And what I mean by that is it's harder and harder to get a good warehouse. It's harder and harder to find the space. It's harder and harder to get closer to the city. We are sprawling a lot, as the same problems with residential. So that's probably why people are going for longer, and business owners want longer in terms of more security. Look, I think we've seen a massive increase in rental rates, market rates over the last sort of maybe 3 to 4 years. They've really increased to meet the price of the property now. So that's why I think.
So that's in commercials following what done the same as residential.
Correct.
So obviously we know residential has gone up, whatever it is, 4.5% or so every year.
Correct.
The rent, so that's carried on.
Yeah, and I think it's been slow for the commercial rate, and
Right.
now it's jumping now, and I think you'll find a lot of people are sitting there going, what do I do with my money, and that's probably potentially, it is a hard part. It's very vulnerable when someone sits there and you say, look, I need to try and put my rent up, but then the tenant could leave, and I think that's the dangerous part, and probably one of the parts that we work closely with, because we understand both tenants and owners, and we can find that match there.
Right.
But look, I generally think commercial's tracking in the right area. The stock, where we talk about the stock, the quality of the stock is, compare it to the residential market. Is a lot of these commercial buildings don't have insulation.
Yeah.
And they need insulation, e.g. an upgrade in the roof. They need looking at their facades, the quality of the drainage, the cleaning, basically how it runs, how it operates, your driveways, your accesses like that. They all need a little bit of work.
Yep.
And that's ultimately sort of where we come into play. New building's hard.
Yep.
Commercially, but it's still, it's a riskier game, but there's still a lot of possibilities in there.
I was going to ask, speaking of doing new build or old builds, I know in a lot of parts of the country the EQC type issues of, and I know not a lot about it, but the ratings it has to be before you can carry on having it as a commercial. Is that as much an effect in Auckland as it is in other parts of the country? Well, you may not even know. I'm not sure.
Unfortunately, it's a huge effect.
Yeah.
The reality of that is that it's a blanket decision by New Zealand, and you have to look at the quality of the IE reports. The initial earthquake, the reports, you got to look at them, and banks go off them.
Yeah.
So that's the hard part. That is one of the bits that we focus on in terms of a lot of people. It's very risky because an engineer can sit in there and say, oh, it does that, but then the reality is the prices could skyrocket to fix it.
Yeah.
So we do a lot of that type of work to fix up a building and bring it more up to building code. But it's one of those elements that is the skill is the risk level of what a commercial investment is. Do you go for the rock solid one at 100% rating, or anything over 67% is considered sort of bank leveraging?
Right.
So you can leverage with that. Anything below is tricky. That's the element of risk that the investor needs to look at.
Yeah, so someone new, I guess, coming in, they would want to be at least that 67%.
Yeah, I would suggest that's probably the wiser point.
Yeah, well, as I said, you got to need that to get the lending anyway, I suppose.
Correct. Or a rock solid tenant, and you look at sort of the tenure of the tenant and sort of the state of their business.
Yeah. Question I just thought of when you're talking then, like in a residential, if you buy a heat pump and you might put the rent up $15 a week to try to compensate over the next year or whatever. Can you do the sort of same thing with a resident? I guess a commercial, maybe you can't because you've already got the increases built in with a long-term lease. Generally, expected to have heat in there, I suppose, or
it's different. Generally, the beauty of the commercial market is if someone is cold, then they can put their own heat pump in.
Yeah.
And businesses have to do that.
Yeah.
And they need to do that, so it doesn't actually come back on the landlord's cost.
In fact, we just did the exact same thing down here a year ago.
Yeah.
In the middle of the winter, it was a cold winter last year, and we went shares, in fact, with I negotiated hard.
And the landlords, they do work with you in those elements.
Yeah.
If you say you want this and you're prepared to work with them, then they understand that you're upgrading their building. So it is very much a bit more of an open type of agreement rather than a closed off residential. Everything that you want in there is I do it. You can't touch anything like that. There's very much permissions around what you can.
And this is the first commercial I've personally leased here. I've had another one before with the group, but you're right. It's a good relationship we've got going with our property manager, who's in the part of the owners group sort of thing. So that works well. So commercial, a lot of them, when I first started all these years ago with residential, go, bloody commercial, you need millions of bucks worth to get into commercial. What I need, 10 mil, 100 mil, or a few 100K.
I mean, look, a few 100K can work. The levels are very different. You can buy a little unit and get yourself potentially 6.5% return, even lower, because it's more secure in terms of the tenant. So you can start off smaller, and then you can get bigger. Look, some of us help by putting syndications together, either individually with a few mates, collectively with a few mates, in the same sort of. You look for the same sort of income earners. You don't try and bring in people that are similar.
Yeah,
and
that's
then
important.
Yeah, and then the other element would be if you wanted to go big, then there are those options. So it can get bigger and bigger, but you don't need a lot of money to start in the commercial game. Yes, it's bigger than where it used to be.
Yeah.
But because you've got a tenant and a fixed tenant, the bank looks at you a little bit more favourably if everything stacks up on the bank wise. So
okay.
Yeah, it's.
And on the tenant side, and again, this will depend on what size of investment you're buying, but is it better to have one large tenant or a variety of tenants?
Yeah, I think the reality comes back to the state and the design of your building. If you've got a building that suits just having one tenant, then am of the opinion, and this is just my own personal opinion, because obviously we all invest differently, is to have the one solid tenant, because you can work on the relationship. But if a building fits itself to having several tenants, then you've just got to look at the building as more like three buildings rather than one individual building. It's just three people you've got to talk to and three people you've got to please.
More people, more problems, I guess.
Yes and no. And then a lot of the stuff we sort of try and do is promote the type of community in the buildings, so that people can talk and you can come with a collective either issue or your collective solution, because you've spoken to your neighbour and you get on. Can get a little harder, but as you say, it's not the same as you buy a house and the neighbour's an absolute piece of work, and that house is and how do you know as an investor what the neighbour's going to be like? You don't. It's very risky. Commercially, you can.
Yeah, but more control.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, no, jolly good. Yield, just mentioned it before. You said about you just threw loosely a term of 6.5% for smaller stuff. When I first learned about commercial, I always got in fact the market's changed a lot in the last 10 to 15 years, I suppose, but I've always thought of yields as slightly less than residential. We've been talking the recent sort of weeks, it's sort of the other way around, especially at the moment. So what's so people here are listening, I know you're just the Auckland market you're into, you're not in Christchurch or Wellington or whatever, or maybe you are, but what is a good yield? And again, compared to $500,000 place, a $5 million place, and there's a lot of factors to take in. I know we'd be here all day talking about it otherwise, what do you consider as a good yield now in Auckland, and why?
I think a good yield now would be 5.5% with a solid tenant and a solid building. I think is about market. A little bit higher, a little bit lower, either way. I think that's probably where the market sits. But you can get them slightly cheaper, depending on the quality of the building and prepared to, what money are you going to put into your building. That's sort of where it sits. Where does that sit in residential? I think it's slightly higher now, isn't it, than what the residential market sits at?
Definitely. Auckland.
So
unless you're going to do a lot of work to create a yield at sort of 6 or 7% these days, that's for sure. So going rate, normal Joe Blow in the street thinks 3.5% is a good gross yield. Most people here listening don't. But 5% yields a good yield in Auckland at the moment. So
especially the fact that you can factor that long term.
You
don't have a lot of downtime on that money, bar the fact that potentially the tenant can leave. But if you lock those terms in, then it's obviously that security there. Look, when I grew up, parents looked at sort of 12 to 10%.
Yeah, yeah.
I went over to Europe and it was sort of sitting at 8 to 7%. I've come back in 3 years and now it's down to 5%. So where does the market go? I'm no genius. I'm like everyone else on the ride, and you learn from your experiences and you learn from the market and you understand, you research things, and you listen to things like this and grasp information to gather your opinion and your view. It's like anything in life, you've got to go with your gut, and at the moment that's where I think it sits, and I'd be happy to invest at those sorts of levels.
Right. Okay, well, we'll let you not let too many secrets out. You want to keep some, I guess. But what does Arnie Williams do when he looks at a commercial property? What do you look at? And obviously you're going to look at it to renovate or whatever, and keep or renovate and sell. So what sort of things do you look at?
I look at a range of things. I mean, first is the tenant and the quality of the tenant. Secondly is the building and the quality of the building. What work needs to be done to bring it up to scratch, and then you look at potentially the lifeline of it.
Yep.
Is this a 10-year building or is this a 25-year-old building? And then how long is it going to last me before I have to put work in? And then the other element I look at is the makeup of the building. So when I talk about that, is it 90% warehouse, 10% office? Is it 50-50? And the interesting part is where the market moves, or where the demand moves for type of space. A lot more people are wanting a bit more warehouse rather than office, but you come more in a city where it used to be sort of a mixture of warehouse and office, is moved a lot more to the office type of space and the location. One of the things you do want to think about is the quality of the location and where's it going. I think especially with our beautiful travel arrangements in Auckland, you want to look at that. So different type of buildings will be in different type of areas, so don't sit there and potentially go and buy a big factory in the centre of town, because you're going to get no demand for it. But if you go sort of southern corridor and you look like that, then there is demand for that, but there's not demand for a massive office block.
You're right.
So just elements like that is what you look at, and then try and get personable with that tenant. And it's not always about the tenant. It's I try and stress it's a mixture between the tenant and the property and the building. Yeah.
And there are many empty sort of places out there at the moment. Obviously, an empty place is the best place to. Well, it's not necessarily the best place to get, but it does create opportunity, I suppose, to get a good tenant in there, and sometime down the track when you.
Yes and no. I think we look to people that are lifestyles are shifting. So a lot of owner occupiers that lifestyles are shifting, and they are sitting there saying, well, look, it happened with people look, I've made a considerable amount of money off my property compared to my business.
Yes.
Is it time for me to now sell the property, potentially shut down the business and go to something else, or do I, it's little elements like that.
Absolutely.
And it's very easy for you and I to talk about them on a podcast, but doing them is another thing. And what I've found, obviously, with my past is that I was never going to be the best winger, or never going to be the best fullback or the first five. But if I concentrated on focus on being and doing what I did, which is the second row and lock and jumping, then I'll get a better result. And that's what I'd encourage other investors to do. Look, sometimes it's better to potentially take that money and say, yep, I'm happy with that, and move on, and let someone else do it who's skilled at it. But sometimes if you try and add the value, go through the plans, go through the consents, do the tenant things, you get distracted from life. Two, you probably potentially lose money at the other end, because you haven't learnt the skills that we've learnt. I mean, I'm very lucky with the group that I'm with. They've been around the game since 1995. It's a long time to be in this game. So
no, totally relate to that. It's easily sitting there talking about renovations and what have you too, and making money. People think it's easy, and in theory it's really easy until you get out there and actually start doing it and try to do it. So you need your expertise.
Like anything, mate. Like anything. You and I wouldn't be that great at yoga, but there's some women out there that are amazing at yoga. Even some other guys.
You know that really well, right? Because I'm freaking hopeless at it. But I found out about 3 weeks ago. Well, you sort of covered them, I guess. But any other dangers? I mean, probably covered most of them with commercial property. I guess the biggest one is having the experts to know what they do. is one.
Biggest danger is vacancy. Does the tenant walk out and I've got a building sitting there for empty for 2 years, 3 years?
And
At the moment, that's probably not the case, but there could be time that it does come around. Business confidence is a key indicator for that. Who knows what it is at the moment?
Just on that, I'm really going to put you on the spot here for just what you're thinking. It's just your opinion, but I'm 277. What used to be 277 in Newmarket. Was just down again the other day. Then that's going to be. It's been closed down for almost 2 years and going to be the biggest thing in Southern Hemisphere or whatever it's going to be. And I look at all those roads, all the shops that are on the main road at Broadway now that used to be in the old 277 are down there, and they're all witching. They're already packing their bags to go back in this new big flash building across the road. Geez, what's going to happen to something like that around Broadway? I was sitting there going, geez, there's going to be a lot of empty places down here, and maybe it might change the whole demographics of the main street there.
It creates opportunity.
Yeah. Yep.
So you've got to look at it creates opportunity. Yes, people, and it's human nature, or almost the world that we're driving now, which I have a big concern about, which is image and what people perceive us as, with social media and the likes. But you look at something like that, someone comes in and says, oh great, I can get maybe 5 or 6 of these blocks and I can create something. It could be the new restaurant precinct of Auckland, Newmarket. So you've just got to look at things in different ways. Potentially that's what we do. That's really what we do. I wouldn't advise that for a new mum and dad or syndication to say, mate, I'm going to turn this into because it's a lot of work. It's
that's a big job.
But I look at those things like that, and I just look at opportunities in terms
lovely
of
answer, opportunity. I love that.
Well, the world's full of opportunities in it, and whether
100%.
yours wants to be in property, whether yours wants to be in retail or online or television or whatever it is, I just think there's huge opportunities, and the word opportunities is exciting in terms of the way you can look at it.
Yeah. Okay, so just a couple of things to sort of finish up is a bit about if people want to get a hold of you for whatever reason. I guess a few things you could be looking at for people who actually do have rundown properties. It might be a family, a friend, or someone even listening here that's got a property and they're really struggling and don't know what to do and go, geez, just someone help me. And also the other end of people who come when you have places you want to sell that it's a good property set up with good tenants with a good yield.
So we're open, open, as I say, probably for business. I'm happy to look at any property and see what we think on it, potentially offer you a price if we think there's something in it, and then vice versa. If we have something that we potentially want to sell or move on, then vice versa, make contact, and we can go through there. And it's about working together when it comes to commercial. It's not just, look, I know what I'm doing and I'm just going to buy this house and sell this house, and it's actually working together. It's it's working with good agents. It's working with people like ourselves that can say, look, we're happy to purchase this and do the work and go from there and hold it, blah blah blah. It's commercial is still an element of your lifestyle. You've got to understand that they can chew you up, the stress behind them, blah blah blah. You can do that. So I'd love people to give me a ring or get in touch with us if they've got anything where they think potentially I want to get rid of this building, I don't want it, or hey, I'm really looking for this type of investment. So
that's great. We a lot of people here read my little newsletter every Thursday or Friday that comes out, and they read the first paragraph with some things coming up at times. So if we something coming up, keep reading that, and
we can put them through you and stuff like that. Or
and there are just a few people at the moment looking at syndication too. We've got a few different opportunities to put sort of syndicates together for a variety of types of things. So if people we don't probably go out to do that sort of thing, but we've got a couple of people who've come to us and asked that sort of thing. So, and as I said, with a larger commercial, that's always a good way to get involved. If you can learn about a project you've got some money invested in, and learn about commercial as you go with it.
Well, you look at the element of it of a team. It's a team. You're putting together a team, and so you're spreading the risk. You're all enjoying the upside, and you're spreading the risk of the downside. So. But just make sure you do it with the right people, in the right sort of bracket as you, and the right mindset, because nothing worse than buying something and then Jonesy down the road goes, oh, I want to sell now, and you're like, well, we looked at this long term, and then that's the hard part. So
Yep.
it's picking your team wisely.
Absolutely.
Get a good coach, mate. Get a good coach.
Get a good coach. You had a couple, have you?
I've had a few good coaches in my time. Yeah, no, they.
I won't put you in the spot and say how few bad ones you've had too, but
only the Australian ones.
Oh, mate.
Only the Australian ones. So yeah, no, look,
all good.
very enjoyable.
No, thanks very much, Joel. Hey, appreciate your time today. I know you're a busy man and you're out there doing a few things. So thanks for coming along and helping a few people who've got a few good ideas out of what you've said and all goes well. People like what you said. We'll might get you back in 3 or 4 months' time and give an update and see what's happening.
Yeah, happy to work with anyone and yourselves, and it's only, as I said, it's only my opinion, and that's the beauty of things like this. It's only your opinion. But
Absolutely.
Get in contact. I'm sure they'll get my details off you. Ardmore Group, and love to make contact.
Absolutely. Oh, thanks very much for your time. Those watchers that are here every 2 weeks waiting for me to do it, there will be a break for about a month. I am actually having I'll say it's a well-earned break. Other people might not. So we'll be back in about a month for the next podcast after this one. In the meantime, have a good time, be happy, and do the right thing. Thank you.